Jai Madhava. It's time. It's time. Okay. We are live. You're hearing a class on Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd Canto, 14th chapter, verse 36, by His Grace Gopal Champu Prabhu.
Hey, Hare Krishna.
We're all live.
Jaya Radha Kunja Bihari
Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Aiden, can you hand the songbook to Noah? Yashodhanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodhanandana Braja Janaranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Sachin is already here. Why is he already? Why is he on the TV? Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodhanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodhanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari यमुना तेरा वन चारे Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Whimsical, is it? Jai Om Vishnu Pad Paramahamsa Jai Om Vishnu Pad Paramahamsa Prabhupada Ashtotar Tata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Om Vishnu Pad Paramahamsa Prabhupada Ashtotar Tata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Nama Acharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद की श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ राधा कुंड श्यामा कुंड गिरि गोवर्धन की श्री वृंदावन धाम की श्री मायापुर नवद्वीप धाम की श्री जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की गंगा माई की जमुना माई की तुलसी देवी की भक्ति देवी की समवेद भक्त वृंद की Srila Prabhupada's transcendental book distribution ki, Harinam Sankirtan Yagya ki, transcendental prasadam distribution ki, Gaura Premanandi, Hare Hare Bol, all glories to the seven devotees, Hare Krishna, all glories to the seven devotees, Hare Krishna, all glories to the seven devotees, Hare Krishna, all glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga, all glories to the Prabhupada. Om Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Visaya Bhuttare, Shrimate Vaisheshik Klasarikari Dinamani. Namo Prasaya Shilaya Prabhupada Saline Anititare Tasmai Shastra Bhajan Chodhane. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Dhato Jayam Udhirayet Nasta Presva Bhadresu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Tamaswake Bhakti Bhavati Naishtiki Krishne Swadhama Bhagate Dharma Jnana Dibisaha Sakalana Samyasamesa Purana Kotunoditaha. So here we are on this Sunday morning. It's been a long weekend, but it's not over yet. Somehow, I feel like I haven't slept in. Last night I had a little bit of sleep, but the previous days before that, it felt like one long day, even though it was 2 days. Here comes a Maha garland. Hare Krishna. One time my Guru Maharaj, he was sitting on the Vyasa Sign in Chicago, and he was about to give the Srimad Bhagavatam class. And then he hadn't received the garland yet. So he looked out at the devotees that were there and he said, "Where's my garland?" And from one point of vision one could say, he's expecting a garland. Maharaj went on to explain why he had said that. So in the Bhagavatam there's a verse that describes that the devotees of the Lord, in the 11th canto, I can maybe try to find and share with all you, it says that the devotees of the Lord decorate their bodies with the garlands, with the remnants from the Lord, and smell the fragrances that have been offered to the Lord, In this way, one consciousness becomes purified. So he was saying it more from a humble position, saying, I need that purification. I need to have, I need that purification. I need to have the Lord's garland on me. I also I'm grateful to all the devotees out here, and it's been a long weekend and a lot of service, and just to show you selfless dedication. Like Prabhupada would say that about his followers, I was just a poor old man when I came, and I didn't bribe everyone to do. So all you're doing service just out of your sincerity and your desire to want to please your Srila Prabhupada, Shri Radha Govinda, and Hansa Prabhu and the other temple authorities. So it's very inspiring to be with devotees who are very serious about their devotional service. So we're continuing here to study the Srimad Bhagavatam, look at one verse day by day. Now, the class for Saturday was scheduled on verse 35, so I think I'll read that verse because we didn't hear it. And I'm sure we're giving class on verse number 34, and the mic went out. No sound. Okay, that's back. So I'll read 35, and then we can do 36 responsibly. All right? Yeah. Okay. Namorudhaya mahate dhiraya vagraya viddhase shivayam mustada. Oh, we did read this. Yeah. I guess Prabhu did 35 then, yesterday. Maybe we'll do 34 then. Or the day before. Okay, anyway, we'll just go with 36. Okay. Sa Maha Prasiddhatam Bhamo Bhagavan Uvangraha Yadhyasyapi Yamukam Pyanam Srinam Devaha Satipati. Sana prasiddhatam bhamo Bhagavan Uru Vangraham Vyadhasya Yanukam Yanam Srinam Deva Satipati Sana Prasiddhatam Bhamo Bhagavan Urvanuraha
Vyadhasyanukampyanam Srinam Deva Satipati
Sanam Prasidatam Vamo Bhagavan Uruvanugraha Vyadasya Pyanukam Srinam Deva Satipati
Sana Prasidatam Bhamo
Sana Prasidatam Vamo
Bhagavan Urvanugraha
Bhagavan Uvanugraha
Vyadasyapyanukampyanam
Vyadasya Pyanukam
Srinam Deva Satipati
Srinam Deva Satipati Sana Prasidatam Vamo
Sana Prasidatam Bhamo
Bhagavan Uruvanugraha
Bhagavan Urvanugraha
Vyadasya Pyanukam Yanam
Vyadasyapyanukampyanam
Srinam Deva Satipati
Srinam Deva Satipati Sona Prasadam Bhamo Sona Prasidatam Bhamo Bhagavan Uvanugraha
Bhagavan Uruvanugraha
Yasakyatu Anukampyanam
Vyadasya Pyanukam
Shanam Deva Satipati
Srinam Deva Satipati
Sana Prasiddhatam Bhamo
Sanam Prasidatam Vamo
Bhagavan Uru Anugraha
Bhagavan Uruvanugraha
Vyadhastyapi Anukampyanam
Vyadasya Pyanukam
Srinam Deva Satipati
Srinam Deva Satipati Saha Hi
Naha Vidas
Siddhatam Be pleased
Brother-in-law Bhagavan, the personality of all opulences. Uru, very great. Anugraha, merciful. Vyadhasya, of the hunter. Api, also. Anukampyanam, of the objects of mercy. Strinam, of the women. Devaha, the worshipable Lord. Sati Patihi, the husband of Sati, the chaste. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. Translation. Let him be pleased with us, since he is my brother-in-law, the husband of my sister Sati. He is also the worshipful Lord of all women. He is the personality of all opulences and can show mercy towards women, who are excused even by the uncivilized hunters. Purport. Lord Shiva is the husband of Sati, one of the sisters of Diti. Diti invoked the pleasure of her sister Sati so that Sati would request her husband to excuse her. Besides that, Lord Shiva is the worshipful Lord of all women. He is naturally very kind towards women, on whom even the uncivilized hunters also show their mercy. Since Lord Shiva is himself associated with women, he knows very well their defective nature, and he might not take very seriously Diti's unavoidable offense, which occurred due to her faulty nature. Every virgin girl is supposed to be a devotee of Lord Shiva. Diti remembered her childhood worship of Lord Shiva and begged his mercy. Om Jnanatmirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chachurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadhamayam Dadhati Swapadantikam Bandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapatakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sabetam Savdutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padhan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitam Shra He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyashta Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mukam karoti vachalam pangulang hayate girim yakripatamam vande Shri Gurudetaranam Sana prasiddhatam bhamo bhagavan urubhanugraha vyadhasyap yapnu yanukampyanam strinam deva satipati. Let him be pleased with us, since he is my brother-in-law, the husband of my sister Sati. He is also the worshipful Lord of all women. He is a personality of all opulences and can show mercy towards women who are excused even by the uncivilized hunters. So we're continuing to hear this story of Diti and Kasyapa and how, the great demons Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha came to take their birth or appearance, you can say, how they came into being in this world. And this pastime has many different aspects and different lessons can be drawn. Just looking at the verse this morning in the chapter, I was thinking of a few things that could be shared. As we were hearing yesterday, Bhumipati Prabhu had quoted this saying from Gaur Govinda Swami, that Prabhupada's books are like a ocean, and at the bottom of this ocean there's the jewels. So we shouldn't just stay on the surface, but in every story of the Bhagavatam there's unlimited meanings and lessons that can be drawn out. So as I was reading through the verses, we see in the beginning how Diti was so much disturbed by it's described there how she was overcome by this passion to want to unite in sexual intercourse with her husband because she had the desire to make some children. Now that desire in and of itself was not a wrong desire to have. What was the fault pointed out here was that she just wanted to do it without consideration of when was the proper time. So it said that Diti was just being pushed by the urges of the senses. And this pushing, then she pushed her husband into finally having that combination to produce the children. Now, after the act was done, we see how Diti, she had realized, like, hey, maybe I did the wrong thing. We shouldn't have done that at this time. So here what I noticed was that kind of this remorseful sentiment, the sentiment remorse she had after doing the act at the wrong time. And then she started to, now as a result of her feeling remorseful, she's now praying to, telling her husband that, we should pray to Lord Shiva to forgive us. I was trying to understand, maybe someone can enlighten me, but I couldn't really find the exact reason why they wanted to pray to Lord Shiva. Now, from reading the verses, it seems that Kashyapa would do his oblations to the demigods, to the various demigods, and because this was done at the time that usually Lord Shiva is maybe offered his oblations, that that the oblations weren't offered. So maybe what I saw from that was that possibly Diti was feeling like, because I didn't allow my husband to do the oblations, that Shiva was going to be upset with us. Is that?
Also, there was talking about, I don't have my phone so first, but I think it talks about how, should I wait? I think it
If there's no mic, it doesn't count.
So Shiva mentions how Shiva and the ghosts are also coming during that time when they're trying to.
Right, because that's the time. So that's what I just mentioned. So that's the time when he's usually offered his oblations. So that wasn't done. I figured that wasn't done because Kashyapa then was engaged in the act.
And I think also it was like
Is it
fear
on?
of, I think also it's like a fear of punishment from
Yeah.
Shiva because of that, what they were doing at that time. I think maybe like she was afraid that Shiva was going to curse them or kill the child because of the fact that they did it at that time. But
Right.
I'm not sure if those are intercorrelated.
Anyway, we can do a little more research into that, but but here we see clearly that she felt, I did something wrong. So this is a very good feeling, actually, for in the devotional sense, that as we're engaging in the process of Krishna consciousness and we're coming to this spiritual life, we start to learn that for a human being, there's certain ways to act and there's certain ways not to act. And there's certain things we should do, there's certain things we shouldn't do. And just due to the fact that we're not, or I can speak for myself, I'm not a pure devotee. There may be times where there may be a little trip, a little slip in the carrying out of our duties. But what actually qualifies one to continue receiving the mercy of the Lord is that one continues on in their service despite, little shortcomings that may come on the path. So in the Bhagavad Gita, there's a verse, Apichet Sudaracharo Bhajate Mamananyabhak Sadho Eva Samantavya Samyak Bhavasito Isaha. So that comes in the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. And I'll just read the exact translation here for you guys. And that's in Bhagavad Gita 9:30. And this verse says that even if one commits the most abominable action, if he's engaged in devotional service, he is to be considered saintly because he is properly situated in his determination. So the point is here that even if some mishap happens in our execution of devotional service, that if our determination is properly situated and we're not resentful of, you can say, the principles or the execution of devotional service or how it's supposed to be properly carried out, that still we should recognize that devotee, or even it may happen in our own life, that, as we're engaging in devotional service, we may have some shortcomings, but understanding that those shortcomings do not disqualify us from engaging in bhakti, because ultimately, if we understand that bhakti is the highest thing, engaging in devotional service is the highest thing, whatever we do, the solution is going to be to ultimately purify, surrender to Krishna, surrender to the devotees, surrender to the Vaishnavas. Please guide me, take up the process again, whatever shortcoming we may have. And in the Bhagavatam, the 11th canto, also this is another place where this is discussed when a shortcoming may happen. And it's this verse, Jatashara makatasu nirvina sarvakarmasu veda dukhatmakam kaman parityage yanishwara tato bhajaitamam pitta shradhalor dhritanishchaya jusamanas chathan kaman duko dharkams chagharayan. This is Bhagavatam 11, 20, 27, and 28. And the translation is, having awakened faith in the narrations of my glories, being disgusted with all material activities, knowing that all sense gratification leads to misery, but still being unable to renounce all sense enjoyment, my devotee should remain happy and worship me with great faith and conviction. Even though he is sometimes engaged in sense enjoyment, my devotee knows that all sense gratification leads to a miserable result, and he sincerely repents such activities. So here again, we see this is Krishna speaking, and he's giving the mentality of the devotee. So he's pointing out the fact that the devotee knows that all sense gratification leads to misery, but still being unable to renounce all sense enjoyment. So he may, engage in something that he's not supposed to be engaged in. But the devotee should continue to worship him, Krishna, with great faith and conviction. And then the other point here being that he sincerely repents such activities. So we know that Krishna is all merciful, but we shouldn't take advantage, or one shouldn't take advantage of Krishna's leniency, thinking that, I can go on doing my nonsense and Krishna would just continue to be unlimitedly merciful to me. No, that's an offensive mentality. The 10 offenses. Offense number 7 is to commit sinful activities on the strength of chanting the holy names. So here it's given an indication that if something does happen, there's a sincere repentance of such activities, and then there can be a proper rectification. Because I was just discussing with one devotee the other day that the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, they go into there's this 12-step program, and just like with anything, but just particularly the first step is recognizing that we have a problem. So acknowledging the problem. And, like, for example, maybe Alcoholics Anonymous is that I'm an alcoholic. So, therefore, I need help. And so, because we're entrapped in a material body, the senses, the mind and the senses and material energy is pushing us. It's a constant push. The Bhagavad Gita is described as when Arjuna is asking Krishna, it's like, I feel like it's almost by force that we're engaged, that we're forced to do certain activities, as if by force. As if by force. So the first point is, recognizing that we need some help. And then turning to those that can help us. In this regard, it would be our spiritual master, senior devotees, mentors, and those who have got some skin in the game, so to speak. Meaning they've also been engaged in devotional service for some time, and they've invariably have gone through some of those struggles themselves, and so they'll be able to help us. That's why there's this verse, Mahajano Yena Kata Sapanta. We will follow in the footsteps of the great souls, Mahajans. Now, we understand that there are great souls amongst us, and in one place is stated that there will always be, pure devotees on the planet to that continue the parampara. So this family that Prabhupada has created, this ISKCON society, has been created because Prabhupada wanted to create a society in which we can advance individually in devotional service and give people an opportunity to come in contact with devotees, so they can actually come out of this material entanglement and reinstate themselves back in their actual position of being a servant of Krishna, eternal servant of Krishna. Yeah, so this point of remorse, this point of being properly situated in our determination. Because as we're carrying out in our service, so many obstacles may come on our path. But remaining in the association of devotees will help us overcome those difficulties when they do come. Because they will come. We're in the material world. And it's Maya's duty, actually it's her service, to check every living entity that's also trying to come close to Krishna. In the sense that she wants to make sure that only the best souls, not the best souls you can say, the best of each individual soul is there. She doesn't want to allow any rascals to go into Krishna's realm. So we have to become qualified. So you can say this is Maya's duty as the warden, to make sure that we become purified, or to make sure that unqualified persons do not go further or get the freedom. So when we're being thrashed by Maya, she's doing her job. And she's empowered by Krishna to do that job. Shasti Sthiti Pradhan Sadhani Shakti Eka Chayeva Yasa Bhuvanami Viparti Durga Ishthana Rupam Api Yasa Chaitate Sa Govindam Ari Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. That even she is only working under Krishna's direction. So only the most purified souls, or when the soul actually becomes fully purified, then is that soul qualified again to enter into Krishna's association. So this is you say Maya has a thankless task, but she's doing it out of a service to Krishna. So then another thing that's brought up in this particular section is here Diti starts to describe some of the qualities of Shiva. Lord Shiva. Now, Prabhupada has explained to us that Lord Shiva is Vaishnava Anamata Shambhu. He's the greatest Vaishnava. In the 8th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, some of Lord Shiva's glories are shown there. And I'll just bring it up here just to share a few verses with all of you. Particularly in the 8th, in the 8th canto, and the 7th chapter, which is entitled Lord Shiva Saves the Universe by Drinking Poison. We see here later on in the chapter, towards the end, when finally the churning of the milk ocean is happening. So there's a big, to give some context for Noah, there's a churning happening. There was a conflict between the demigods and the demons. And so there was this big mountain that was within this milk ocean, this ocean of milk. And basically they were churning this milk ocean. And then from the ocean, many things started to come. So their goal was to get this nectar that would give them immortality, quote unquote. Just make you live a long time, but quote unquote immortality. So as a result of this churning, first poison comes out. And then the demigods and demons were afraid of, this poison that was coming out, and basically someone needed to clean up the mess. And so they figured, okay, only Lord Shiva is powerful enough to handle this. So then Lord Shiva came on the scene. So here, starting with verse 37, here it says, Lord Shiva said, my dear Bhavani, just see how all living entities have been placed in danger because of the poison produced from the churning of the ocean of milk. And then he says here, people in general, being bewildered by the illusory energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, are always engaged in animosity towards one another. But devotees, even at the risk of their own temporary lives, try to save them. My dear gentle wife, when one performs benevolent activities for others, the Supreme Personality of Godhead Hari is very pleased. And when the Lord is pleased, I am also pleased, along with all other living creatures. Therefore, let me drink this poison, for all the living entities may thus become happy because of me. So here, this is one of the exemplary qualities of a Vaishnava, is that they're willing to please the Lord to take on some voluntary austerity. And then later on here, 42, therefore Lord Shiva was dedicated to auspicious benevolent work. This is Sukadeva Goswami speaking. For humanity, compassionately took the whole quantity of poison in his palm and drank it. It is said that great personalities almost always accept voluntary suffering because of the suffering of people in general. This is considered the highest method of worshiping the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is present in everyone's heart. So we see Lord Shiva here, he's rightly described as the greatest Vaishnava. And then here Sukadeva Goswami in this verse, he's particularly pointing out this quality that the Vaishnavas have, is that they almost always accept voluntary suffering because of the suffering of people in general. This is considered the highest method of worshiping the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is present in everyone's heart. So this is a thing when going out, when one is engaged in the outreach work in the Krishna conscious movement, we can have this vision, because that is actually the correct vision to have. The correct vision to have is that within the body of every single living entity is contained the Supreme Lord in their heart. Sarvasachaham hridesanavisto. So here Krishna himself is stating that within the heart of all living entities, I am there. Within the heart of all living entities. And I was reading this book, The Divine Love Trip, by what's her name? Samya Priya. Devi Dasi, one of Prabhupada's disciples. She spent 15 years distributing books in the LAX airport. And she was saying how having this vision was one of the main things that helped her carry on day by day with her service, was that actually this person I'm coming in contact with is carrying Krishna in their heart. And so I have to be very sensitive in the way I deal with them. And then they're kind of like my long-lost brother or sister who has just forgotten that their ultimate benefit is to engage in the service of Krishna. So with that vision, we can really have, we can carefully approach people with a heart of trying to really do what's in their best interests. So instead of, I know when I first began doing book distribution, sometimes the mentality of, or even, Harinam, maybe one could feel that, maybe I'm disturbing these people. Like, I'm out here and I'm bothering them, or, they're just minding their own business. Why do I have to approach them? Why do I have to? No, but actually this is the greatest welfare work. Because if they've forgotten their relationship with Krishna, they're just on the highway to hell, as the saying goes. Because they're just engaging full on, head on in all sinful activities. And they're heading in the wrong direction. So actually it's the most merciful work. And that's why when Srila Prabhupada first met with Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati immediately instructed Srila Prabhupada, you should take this message of Lord Chaitanya and preach it in the English-speaking in the Western world. This would do good for you. This would do good for you and for those who will assist you. And then Prabhupada put his argument, because at that time Prabhupada was a Gandhian, and he was supporting this India independence sentiment. And so he put this argument before Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. But of course, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta said, no, it cannot, Krishna consciousness is so important that it cannot wait for the so-called independence of India. And ultimately, that wouldn't solve the problems of life, which we actually know what the ultimate problems in life: jhara, mrityu, jhara, vyadhi, birth, death, disease, and old age. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, actually the only thing would say that the only thing that's lacking in this world is Krishna consciousness. This is actually the only thing that's lacking. So we can all do our little part and try to expand the Krishna consciousness movement, constantly praying for the mercy of Shri Shri Radha Govinda, Srila Prabhupada, our spiritual masters, to engage us as instruments, to do the best we can, to try to bring others to Krishna. And in that way, we can be entering into the mood of the Vaishnavas. Because I may not have so much compassion in my heart, but the Vaishnavas have compassion. So if you serve someone, you meditate on someone who does have compassion, these qualities will become manifest in your heart as well. So that's why, in a recent conversation we had with His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj, he mentioned two things that are absolutely essential for the success of any endeavor, spiritual endeavor, or in our endeavor to serve within ISKCON, in this Krishna conscious movement. He said the first thing that's absolutely necessary is that we study Prabhupada's books and purports. Because when we do this, we understand, we constantly have the right frame of reference, we have the right knowledge, we have the right sword to slash the ignorance. And then the other thing he mentioned was that one has to be thoroughly studying Prabhupada's life. Studying Prabhupada's life to see the struggles that Prabhupada went through and how he persevered and how determined he was. Because there we have these 2 points of the person Bhagavat and the book Bhagavat. So Prabhupada was, by his life, he was a living example of the qualities of Vaishnava, of the principles we read in the Bhagavad Gita and in the Srimad Bhagavatam. And in this way, by studying Prabhupada's life and studying Prabhupada's books, we imbibe Prabhupada's mood. And then we can properly represent Srila Prabhupada to spread the Krishna conscious movement and to help others come to Krishna. So that was the points I was able to draw out. And if anybody has any reflections or questions or comments, they can come now. Hadai, then Bhakta Chaitanya.
Hare Krishna.
Yes.
Prabhu, thank you so much. I have one reflection. You're mentioning that when we're on Sankirtan, we have this idea with this vision of Sarvasya Chaham Hridhi Sannivisto, that inside every living entity, Krishna is residing there. I was just reflecting on a conversation I had a couple weeks ago with Bhuta Bhavana Prabhu, who came here. And he was saying how valuable it is to understand the 14th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, the modes of material nature. He said once you understand the modes, well, if we like, that's Krishna's like kind of like guide way back home, back to God, because he's the one who created the modes. So he said once you understand the modes, he said, I asked him what's the practical application. He said, once you understand the modes, and when you're on Sankirtan, then you can see, like, just on a few moments, you can see what mode this person is. Is he a more mode of goodness, mode of passion? And you can approach him in such a way that you can bring Krishna into his life. You can remind him again of Krishna. So I was thinking that it's such a valuable skill. He said that sometimes we bring out this, that we say our lines, and if it doesn't work, then it's like it's their fault. But actually, we have to come to their level and we have to see how they can relate with Krishna best and try to connect with that way. So I think I really like that point, that we have to really understand that Krishna is in every single person's heart. And that's actually good meditation when you're walking like in Times Square and you're saying everybody has that connection with Krishna, but they're just trying to fill the God-sized hole in the heart with something else. And then you just think, how can I bring Krishna into their lives, and how I can remind them of their original constitutional position. That's a nice meditation.
Yeah, sometimes, there's a point where, Prabhupada would speak strongly, it'd be like these fools and rascals and demons. But at the same time, Prabhupada was crying with compassion to try to bring these people. So yeah, we can. It's like the point of hate the sin, not the sinner. Hate the sin, not the sin. Yeah, so we could say, he's engaged in rascaldom. He's drinking alcohol. He's eating meat, but then, okay, now the other side of that is, how am I going to help him come closer to Krishna? So yeah, this is a demon. He's doing demoniac things, but how am I going to help him come closer to Krishna? So it's kind of like this simultaneous, these two juxtaposed viewpoints at once, looking at a person. Yeah, that's important. And then coming to the person's level, it's like there's this thing that's taught about communication, especially like, let's say, with children. Instead of, children are small, so let's say if you stand above them and you're looking down at them and you try to talk to them that way, it's kind of fearful for them. But if you get down to their level and you look at them right in the face, in the eye, they'll be much more receptive to listen to what you're saying. So a similar thing we can say when we're going out there. It's like, okay, it's not like I'm thinking I'm some spiritual giant. No, but at least we've got some knowledge by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, by the mercy of our spiritual masters. And then we're going out to try to share that knowledge. So now it's kind of like we have to come down a little bit to their viewpoint and then try to make a connection there to try to give them something then that, can help them come up as well.
Thank you.
Chaitanya.
Thank you, Prabhu. So on this point of those, certain people, they don't recognize their misconceptions or their own faults or whatever. How to keep this, how much distance do we need to keep from those people, and how to keep distance without then looking down upon them? Because sometimes even in devotee circles, sometimes maybe there's some devotees that maybe they take certain things lightly. So how dangerous is it for us to be in that association, and how much distance do we need to keep without looking down upon them?
I think there's an important thing to keep in mind here at this point, because sometimes, we have kind of like these negative injunctions, but then there's also a positive side to that. So the positive side, I would say, is always try to keep good association, always look for good association. So automatically, by you looking for good association or being in good association, automatically you're not in bad association. So this would be one point, is maybe focus on always trying to be in good association, and automatically you avoid those that are bad association. And then those that are, you can say, that we can perceive as being bad association, or that we have to avoid, as Rupa Goswami mentions in the Nectar of Instruction. And also, when it's mentioned about the Madhya Adhikari, that he avoids the envious. This point is that, and even amongst devotees, like you mentioned, there's sometimes maybe some devotees we might not get along with, or some devotees we see that still working on a lot of things on their self. We're not obligated to hang out with them or be around them, but from a distance we can wish them well. So it's a practice of prayer. You can pray for them. Actually, Jiva Goswami mentions this, that the envious, we can avoid them, but then the other responsibility we can have, we can pray for them. So we can always pray for every devotee's advancement. So that's an option. And we can exercise that option. And by doing that, our heart becomes more purified. Because instead of thinking, oh, this person's such a rascal, and say, oh, Krishna, please help him to become more purified. Please guide him, please direct him. Like that. But for me, I can, in my personal life, I just try to focus on having good association. And then automatically you're not in bad association. And then you always have the option to walk away. If you're not bound to be, if someone's speaking something you don't like, or they may be criticizing devotees, or maybe just be, speaking some prajalpa or whatever, you can just walk away. You're not, no one's, you don't have to feel like, oh, if I walk away, they're gonna feel like, whatever. I was having lunch a couple months ago. It was time to have lunch, and we were in some place. It wasn't our normal environment. And so there was many devotees. So I sat down at a table, and some devotees were just speaking about some stuff. And I was just like, I don't want to hear this. So I got up and walked away, and they were like, and I heard him when I was, oh, he's leaving because we're just talking Prajalpa. And I was like, right. They got the point. I didn't have to say anything. So, huh? I hope. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah. Anyway, is that? Yeah. Any other questions, comments, corrections? Okay.
On this point of, you're saying that Rana Swami was saying, reading Srila Prabhupada's books, and he was saying the importance, and we know reading Srila Prabhupada's books are so important. On festival days, usually we say that it's more kirtan and more, fest. So does there need to be like more, because I also heard, for example, Jamashtami in Prabhupada's time, that they were reading the whole Krishna book. They're trying to read, or they're trying to get over a lot of the Krishna book, reading it. So how much reading should be done on festivals, or is it kind of more like, more prasad, more kirtan to kind of attract people, and then later on in their devotional practice, implement more reading?
Well, there's two things here. I mean, there should be kata, but at the same time, there should be prasadam and festivities. And actually, I was just hearing, to this point, something that happened in Vrindavan or in Mayapur. It was in Mayapur during Prabhupada's time. So it was a fast day, and Prabhupada instructed the devotees to cook khichdi and serve it to the pilgrims as they were passing by. And so Prabhupada's godbrothers were criticizing him. It's like, today's a fast day and you're cooking and you're serving khichdi to all these, local, pilgrims and people that are passing by. You're breaking the rules. It's like it's supposed to be a fast day. And Prabhupada said, and then Prabhupada's response to that was that if I don't feed them, they will go and eat fish anyway. They will continue on to some other place and buy some food and eat it. So better that we cook something and give it to them, and they can make some spiritual advancement, than they could just continue on and they're going to do some sinful activity anyway. So he said, but we're not eating it. It's like I'm not instructing the devotees they should be eating khichdi and stuff on a fast day. He said, but this is for the general mass of people. So for the general masses, we see Lord Chaitanya's program was generally kirtan and prasadam. Now, yes, kata is important, and as much facility as we have to do the kata as well, it should be done. So, like when you're talking about reading the whole Krishna book, that happened in New Vrindavan in 1972. And the devotees were trying to read the whole Krishna book. But also we see, if you look at the video, devotees were engaged in cooking massive feast, doing so many other things. So it just depends on the manpower. But yeah, the kata should always go on, because ultimately that's what Prabhupada said the temples are for. Temples are places where people can come and learn and hear about Krishna. So yeah, there's always opportunity. And then for ourselves, sometimes there may be, crunch times like festivals, Rath Yatras, and Janmashtami's like that, where it's going to require for us to do a little more service than usual. But that's these are circumstantial, occurrences. But in our regular, when things are regular, we should, really give very much importance to reading the books. And I mean, and then one point is, we're an educational institution. Prabhupada made that point. It's kind of an educational institution. So when you're educating people, you're ultimately talking about there's going to be some books, and they have to read the books. They have to learn what's in the books. So yeah, that's why Prabhupada would say books are the basis of our philosophy. Otherwise, yeah, I mean, you can have some people where they're coming around the temple for decades, and yet they don't even know the basic things about Krishna consciousness. If that emphasis is also given, that yeah, maybe you should open the book, maybe you should read it, maybe, so these are things that we should also emphasize. But yeah, kirtan and prasadam should be, that goes without say. Now the katha also should be happening, but the thing is, and Prabhupada also mentioned this point, that generally a lot of people are not philosophically inclined. So you may start doing some katha. I mean, like you may notice in the temple room sometimes, and like once the class starts, about half of the temple empties out. And people just walk out because they just can't. They're just not able to hear. But they get the kirtan and then they get the prasadam. So at least they're making advancement in that way. But for us, there's no question. Fill yourself up with as much katha as possible every day. Yes, Bhakti Aidens will be the last one, 9:05.
Sorry, I know we might be running a little late. I wanted to add to that question, because as Sankirtan devotees, we're busy. So sometimes balancing the sadhana and the service can be difficult sometimes. And so different devotees have different mentalities, no, I need to focus more on my sadhana and then I can do my service. And others are like, no, well, I'm just going to do my bare minimum of sadhana because I have a lot of service today. So, I mean, is it more of a relative thing, or how do we really properly balance these things, especially when we're so busy?
Well, like I just mentioned, there's exceptions on festivals where some extra service needs to be done. So on those days, like I know like Jayananda during Rath Yatra sometimes wouldn't chant his rounds. And this is what I've heard from devotees. And then he would just make them all up, a few days later, have like 100 rounds backed up. And he would just chant them. Not this Jayananda here. But yeah, he would chant. Then he would chant his rounds, and he would spend the whole day chanting and stuff like that. But that's exceptional. I know some devotees also sometimes like engage in the service of the spiritual masters, like all day full on service, and then just not able to chant their rounds that day. But then they make it up. So that's exceptional. And these are rare, some exceptional cases. In general, I would say, yeah, there has to be a balance, and the balance is going to be, it may be different for each individual devotee, but there should be at least I'd say at least at the minimum 1 hour a day of, combined hearing and reading, minimum, along with your 16 rounds and following the 4 regs. Now, anything you do above that, it's extra. And if you can arrange it, there's some devotees that have a greater taste. My Guru Maharaj says it's not a question of time, it's a question of taste. Because you can always take advantage. You wake up in the morning, throw on a lecture. Go into the bathroom, throw on a lecture. You're just walking around. Instead of spacing out, you can, have a kirtan playing or have a lecture playing. So, in this way you can fill up the gaps throughout the day. Like yesterday, for example, I was waiting online for the prasadam. And instead of just, kind of spacing out, I read a chapter of Bhagavad Gita. And I just started reading some purports. And then by the time I read, the whole chapter and a couple purports, and I was at the front of the line. So I wasn't disturbed that there was a long line. I was like, okay, I can read right now. So that's, my Guru Maharaj he mentions that to always have something available. I mean, and I'd say about 99% of people always have their phone on them. So, but this can be a source of major distraction or a source of major inspiration. Major inspiration in the sense that we can always be reading, listening to some lecture, watching some devotional videos, or we can just be spacing out on Instagram and Facebook and whatever, just scrolling, doing the mindless, not beneficial, whatever. but we have the opportunity. So it comes down to, yeah, it's an individual thing, and so we have to learn to control the senses individually, because ultimately it's, there's the point of flying our own plane, that you know the right thing to do, and to me someone's not going to be over your back all the time saying, hey, what are you doing? You're doing this. But I mean, you can hold yourself accountable also, and just be conscious of it, and start developing good habits. Like in the morning, like I pretty much, I feel like I've come to the point where I feel like I can't function in the morning unless I throw on Prabhupada's lectures and listen to that at least for half an hour in the morning. I just feel like I can't function. So this is a good thing to have in that way, yeah. And then just always have. I mean, when I go into my office, like I'll have kirtan playing on my laptop, Prabhupada's kirtan just playing, or on my phone I always put a lecture. If I'm just walking up the stairs, I'll throw on a kirtan, or I'll just chant Hare Krishna while I'm walking. You always have an opportunity to keep the vibration going. So that's keep the vibration going. Not a question of time, it's a question of taste. Because I can see, and then you can see advanced devotees, how they manage their time so nicely. Like when I'm with my spiritual master, I'd see, like, he jumps in the car, it's like he just pulls out a book, okay, we're going to hear Bhagavatam. Or he's just walking somewhere, like he'll just be reciting a sloka that he's trying to learn. Or if he gets in the car, as soon as he gets in the car, he'll do something like that. Or some devotee starts, or even I've seen this when he has very important meetings. When they're going to discuss some heavy stuff, or a lot of technical stuff, he'll just say, okay, why don't we read a chapter of Bhagavad Gita before we get started? Because it's in the Bhagavatam, the second chapter of the second canto, last verse, it mentions that the Bhagavad Gita is Vedic intelligence. So he was mentioning this point, how he feels that he shouldn't even, do anything practical, in a sense, until he's gotten his dose of, Krishna Katha. So I hope that answers your question. Fill in the gaps and keep the vibration going. And it's a question of taste, not of time. Because we all have 24 hours in a day. All right? Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki. Srimad Bhagavatam ki. Manchakalpatarubhyascha kripasinabhyevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha.